For most of my life, I was always a bookworm. Well, for all my life, I was a bookworm. And I actually want to talk about being one because it's always been on my mind, and I wanted to make a video about it. For as long as I can remember, I was always interested in reading books because my mom, as when I was around 5, she used to take me to story time in like downtown at a library downtown in Brampton. The library is still there, but when I went for the first time in years, like in 2014, I thought it would be bigger. Turned out it was a little bit smaller, but then again, everything's bigger in when you're little. So what happened was my mom used to take me to story time, and I used to go several like I think mostly every day during the week. I'm not sure. I didn't get through that, but it was actually a really good way to get introduced to books. And so eventually, when I started school, I used to go to the library every day. Now, keep in mind, like I always wanted friends, and I still do have friends. It's just that I always gravitated towards reading books, and so every pretty much during school when I was little, I always just read a bunch of books, like picture books, like Clifford and all that, Clifford and Frog and Toad and Nate the Great, which I haven't read in a long time, but I remember gravitating towards those books, especially Nate the Great, which is actually pretty funny to say because one of my friends who recently got engaged a few years ago, we used to talk about Nate the Great a lot, and we still like it. I mean, I still like it. I haven't read it in years, but maybe it's the nostalgia factor coming. But I, I always enjoyed those books, and so when I was in grades 1 through 2, I used to go to the library probably 2 or 3 times a week because in our classroom we used to have like what's it called? We used to have students go at a time. Some students go at a time or a day. So what happened was, um, it was along the first time where I started wearing glasses because I've always wanted to wear glasses when I was a kid, to the point where I would actually like try to find money around the house just to save enough to get glasses. I thought it was gonna be like a couple of dollars. Turns out I got mixed up, and it was over $100, and glasses are really expensive. But when I started getting glasses, I started like having my personality kind of changed a bit. Like I was still the loudmouth throughout high school, but at the same time I was introverted, and I still liked reading books. So at this point, I started reading a lot of books, selling a lot of stores and whatnot. And so what happened was, at some point, because of my glasses or whatever, I started like reading more and more. I don't know if there's a connection. I don't know. Anyways, but I started reading a lot more than usual, and it's like, okay, fine, I'll just read more and more. And to the point where the teacher's like, huh, like the teacher in my class is like, well, this kid actually does like reading a lot, and she got the whole class to applaud me because I read a lot. And I'm like, this is I just like reading. I don't know. Maybe it's because I actually had clean clothes. It was before I started wearing things like this. It was back when my dad and mom used to buy clothes for me and just send me out with the clothes that they wanted me to wear for the day. So what happened was like it's like okay, I'm in a lineup. Some of us are going to the library, and I had a book in my hand, and I had glasses, so I'm like, okay, so even back then I was kind of adorkable. I'm not that adorkable anymore but whatever. And so I moved to another school after that, and I kept reading, and at the same time I wrote in a journal that our class used to have. We after lunch break we usually just calm down, and our teacher will tell us to like write in a journal, like write in the journal that she gave us, and I just wrote things like I don't know, scripts. They're pretty like I'm pretty sure at this point in my life I started writing fan fiction, and I wrote it about Garfield, but it was like crack fic. I'm pretty sure because it was not like completely faithful to Garfield, but I was in grade 3 through 4, and so I was just like I liked Garfield at the time. My dad actually bought me a a set, like a 3 books in one set of Garfield comics, which I still have, but my sister has it right now. And I'm not that into Garfield right now, but back then I was kind of obsessed. To the point where one of my friends, he had to go on vacation, and I snuck into his desk to read the Garfield book that he had, and it ended up like the teacher found out and she took it away, and I'm like, oh crap. I don't remember what happened after that, but like even back then we were still friends. I haven't seen him in a while, but whatever. Uh, man. So, I kept reading like books like the Bailey City Kids. I think it's called what it's called, and I kept reading like stuff that everybody read. Like I even read Babysitter's Club, like a couple of books, but not completely. And then when I moved once more, and this time it was permanent, in terms of elementary school, which I went to from grades 5 through 8. I just read constantly. Like I still read like um regular books like everybody else, but I was really into horror. And at this point, I really what like at this point, like before I came to the school in grade 5, I used to watch Goosebumps a lot. Like I used to be interested in horror, and I was interested in Goosebumps a lot. And then when I found out that I went to my school library and I saw that there were these Goosebumps books. I'm like, holy crap, there's Goosebumps books here, and now I can actually like read all of these and catch up. And another friend of mine actually had a whole bunch of other Goosebumps books that the school library didn't have, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. And I remember a good time where the friend of mine and the person who used to live across the street, like this is a decade ago, me and his little brother used to just like sit in front of his house and just read a Goosebumps book. Like that's how it was. Like it was summer. It was the kid was about 4 years younger than me, and we were just reading a Goosebumps book with a basket filled with Goosebumps books, like in a basket. And I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. And so like as time went on with that particular school that I went to, like my last 4 years of elementary school, I used to go to the school library for pretty much every day after school, to the point where after the first year and a half, the school librarian knew who I was, and I checked out a book every day. You know, like usually, like a student at a school would like wait for the librarian and have them check out the book for themselves. But after a while, I used to just check out the books by myself. Like after school, it's like, okay, where's my name here? My name, here it is. Scan the book, and I'm out the door. This was pretty much every day, to the point where our class ended up going to the library for research or a project or whatever, and then I just um, scanned out the book on my own. And at the computer, it actually did say how many books were checked out of this year. And there's a classmate right behind me who saw this computer, and he looked at the numbers of books, and he's like, holy shit, he's read over 100 books. And I'm like, and I didn't think anything of it at the time, because it was like, whatever. And so this was like in the future. I'm pretty sure the first year I went to that particular elementary school, the librarian began giving me books. And some of them I don't have anymore because they were lost in the fabric of time, considering, um, my dad took out a bunch of books, put them in a box, and like, okay, these are going to be in the garage. I've never seen them again. But I still have a few. Like, for instance, there's a few Goosebumps books, whatever. And near the end of my first year of elementary school, grade 5 again, the school librarian actually was so interested in me reading all these books. He's like, okay, you know what? Here you go. And he gave me a World Almanac from 1988, and I'm like this is me. This is again. I was 12 years old, and I was really interested in, to the point where I'm like, I want more of these World Almanacs. I mean, sure, the almanac was not in the best condition because, like, all right, here, this, like, I have it in my drawer right here. It's just I don't want to take it out because it was, even in back then, it was in kind of not so good shape. So here, pretend this is the almanac. The spine is ripped from here, like, and when you take it off, it's like at one point I actually had to put tape over it just to see if it will work or not, but it didn't. So like from right here, the whole book was split in half, and I'm like, oh man, because like it was actually really interesting to see because like this was 2002, and I had this World Almanac from 1988. To me, that's one of the things that I love the most about like this librarian because for 95% of the time I was at the library. Like I had recess and I loved going to the internet and computers and whatnot. But the one constant thing during my elementary school years was just reading constantly and going to the library pretty much every day to the point where again he's given me a lot of books like at one point he gave me The Outsiders and he gave me a book called The Giver. Like most of these books that he gave me are in this drawer because it's not because like I bought them, it's because because the sentimentality value. Like and even more sentimental, he actually gave me a rare copy of the Lord of the Rings, the first Lord of the Rings book, and I still have it. He gave me this when I was in the 6th grade, and I'm still grateful for it because like this is I'm pretty sure this is a rare copy because I remember a couple of years ago I showed this to my friend and he's like, holy crap, I always see was the like ones with the that are like that the Lord of the Rings book that are black and have that like ring or that circle in different colors, but this is actually really rare, and this is why I don't want to give away these books because not only are they kind of rare, but at the same time they're like, oh my god, like the sentimentality value. You can't beat sentimentality sometimes. And so other than the library, I used to like all of us knew about the Scholastic Book Club and whatever, and those are really good, except I could barely afford them. Although the times I could afford them, like Captain Underpants and whatnot, they were actually pretty cool. Like just looking at the magazines, the 5-page magazines every month is like, oh my god, what books are going to come out now? And it's like, holy crap, this is actually really good. Like all this is fantastic. Like most of this is fantastic because like I was into horror and all that. So what happened was I remember this one time when Scholastic actually had, okay, there's this huge thing. This is the Goosebumps package. Like 3 books a month until you get the whole original 63 or 65 set of Goosebumps books. And I remember like, okay, I have the first 3 and now I'm going to get the next 3, and I waited. The next month I waited and never got it. And I'm like, oh crap. Like I told this story a couple of days ago to my friends, and they're like, "Why didn't you complain?" And I'm like, "I didn't know how to complain properly." Yeah. So that was actually pretty good. Scholastic, like it was more like Captain Underpants, Goosebumps, and because I read the at one point I think I read the majority of the school library books which I wanted to read, but the thing was like eventually I got into like okay I'm good with Goosebumps now I want to know who the Stephen King person is, and one of the first books I ever read was The Shining, and I thought this is an insanely creepy book, and so I started reading Stephen King books at the same time, I still kept going to the school library to see what they have, and eventually I branched out from horror to young adult, which I've actually read more young adult books now than I have in elementary school because I was too busy reading adult books like Stephen King and just going and just kind of pushing out Goosebumps because I'm pretty sure at some point I grew out of it, but not completely. Like I was starting to grow out of it. So yeah, there was that, and so in high school, I kind of was reading books. I kind of was, but it kind of tapered off because I was interested in things like theater and I had school. But and anytime I went to the library that I go to pretty much every day, I just rent out DVDs like Kids in the Hall DVD or other movies, and it kind of tapered off a bit, but at the same time, I still read books, but not on the basis like I did before, like in elementary school, So it was fun, and so college came, and I actually started reading a little bit more again. Like again, school library. Like the school library in high school was okay, but I just wasn't really that interested as much. But the college one, it was I got into reading a little bit again, but it was fine. It was like, I mean, I'll read on the bus like I still do, but it's whatever. And so, college, like I like reading a little bit more, but at the same time, it's like I'm still into video games, which I will probably someday do a video about how I got into video games or how I was into video games, because I kind of have a story about that. But the book I didn't really completely get full traction into books until I started working. Like there was a little bit of work, like book reading here and there. Going to the library near my house, which has closed. Um, Libraries can't be friends, can they? So um, I got into reading again when I started working, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go to the library and see what they have. Just go around seeing what they have, and eventually I found this website called Goodreads.com. Wait, before I go into Goodreads.com, so because I had a lot of money in the bank because I started working, I bought a whole bunch of books. As and I I pretty much need a bookshelf because there's a lot of books that I bought. There's books like these. Like I have like a whole bunch of books that I kept bringing up and writing. Like I bought notebooks. I bought like manga and chapter books. Like it's I'm pretty sure in 1 year I spent like as of right now I'm pretty sure I've spent more on books than video games. And keep in mind I bought an Xbox One and yeah, I bought an Xbox One in a 1 year, and I bought a whole bunch of games that I eventually needed to play and beat so I can get the Xbox One because that was my goal. But another time. But I bought a whole bunch of books to the point where there's a tote box my dad bought me, and he's like, okay, the books are spilling out. Eventually, you're gonna need a bookshelf. In which I reply, yeah, I'm gonna have to. I didn't reply. Okay, he was right. I didn't want one, but he's like, he was right. He's right. I need a bookshelf eventually. And occasionally there are other things that I regret, but like any other bookworm, there are things that people regret buying. I regret buying this, but again, this was at Target. I bought this about 3 or 4 years ago at Target just when it was closing. I'm like, well, it fits um, a garbage store that doesn't have anything in terms of quality. I'm gonna buy something like that. So this is pretty much the Target Canada of bookstore of books. And yeah, I bought notebooks, and this is my podcast notebook, and this is my what's it called? This is my notebook that I was gonna use for the music video show, but this was back in season 2. Man, that seems a little dusty. And so, yeah, I started buying books at Chapters. I bought books at Value Village. Like I bought pretty much like the majority of a series of unfortunate events at at Value Village. Thankfully, they were like $1.50 each, and that was pretty fun. And so eventually, like I said before, I eventually got into a site called Goodreads. This was back in 2015 when I was on Facebook, and I okay, what's this book site? And I actually found that I had an account for it, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna look at it. And it's like, wow, this is actually really interesting. And I'm like looking at all these books which I never heard of, but they were actually fascinating to me. and I kept reading more, and I kept putting more on my want to read list. To which point on Friday nights I ended up like going on my laptop while eating dinner, like looking at Goodreads, seeing which books I want to read, and then going to the public library and requesting it or putting it on hold or seeing if they have it so I can first thing in the morning before I go to work, I go to the library and get those books. And I still do that to this day. Not with the dinner thing, I just go on Goodreads to mark which books I'm currently keeping track of or I'm reading or I want to read. And that led to a whole nother obsession. Like, if I really want to get a book, I'm just going to order it online or buy it from the store. Because if the library doesn't have it or if no one else has it, I'm just going to buy it at the store or online. You know, I can unlike CDs that I want to get on like immediately where I want to get it at the store. I actually really want I can wait for a book, no problem. I've done it before. I've done it with this book, Mystery Science Theater, the Amazing Colossal Episode Guide. I mean, granted, this only goes up to season 7, and the original series had 3 more, but you know, just reading this is actually pretty good. I suggest checking this out and the updated version, but I suggest that. One of these days I should probably do a book read. Um, like, suggest a few books. And like going back to like elementary school, like on top of the school librarian who got me into like got me let me keep books, um 2 other people actually kind of did that for me. Another is a family, like 2 of them are family friends. One whose house I used to go to every New Year's, and every time I went there, I'm reading and I'm like, hey, can I have this book? And I'm like, sure, why not? And I got to keep it. Some of them I do have right now, like the first Animals book. I have a few more, but I don't remember what exactly I got. And another one, which again, family friend, he had a whole bunch of books that are in a bag. He's like, hey, you want these? I'm like, and my dad's like, sure. And you know, still have them. I still have most of them. One of them is actually a really interesting book which I read recently, and I feel the same way I do back then as I do now. And that's a book called shoot, I'm having a brain fart here. The Midnight Club by Christopher Pike, and it came out in 1994, and same thing as I had back then, I have now. Like, it's about these group of teenagers who are living in a hospice, living out their final days, and it's quite sad. But it's like these people are like dying, but they're like, okay, let's make a club where we tell stories, and just to like take our minds off of things like the inevitable death that we're gonna have. And so at one point in one of these meetings, they actually have some sort of pact. It's like, okay, if one of us dies, we should give out a sign about the afterlife, like some sort of sign that we're going to be there somehow. And so one of them dies, and then like the story truly not kind of begins, but like that's where it all takes place. It's very sad, very bittersweet, but you know, it's actually quite charming, and it kind of gets me choked up talking about it. But yeah, other than the librarian, the other 2 family members actually gave me books. And my grandma actually gave me a Tom Sawyer book. I don't have it was a hardcore, like, hardcover. It's a hardcover book, which used to have the paper, what was it, the cover, the book cover on it, but I lost it because, and I just and now it's just a red book, and I just wrote the words Tom Sawyer on it. This was back in elementary school where I didn't know better. So yeah, there was that, and also the fact like, a book was a book, and I didn't really take care of them. I do now, but yeah, over the time I kind of went away from horror books and just read about anything that interested me. Like I said before, I ended up like reading not YouTube, reading young adult books, and some of them are really quite fascinating. Like, I'm like, where have these been all my life, or a lot of the time? And I'm like, yeah, these are actually pretty good to read. So yeah, So it's more like, and like as of right now, I've kept track on Goodreads.com to see how many books I've read. I've read apparently 267, but there are people out there who have read 600 books in a year, and I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have read all those door stoppers. Then again, I did read It by Stephen King twice in 2 years. Like the first time I read it in like a week, the second time I read it in 4 days. And there's a certain part in that book which I can never get over. I'm like, okay, this time, the second time, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can get over this. And I'm like, no. And if you read the Stephen King's It, you know exactly which part I'm talking about. Oh God. I've never. First time I read it, I've never been so uncomfortable. And the second time was kind of easier in terms of reading it in the long run, not the certain part, but the entire book. Because like the book's like 1,000 pages, and I'm like, okay, if I pace myself, I can actually read this in 250 pages a day. I'm pretty sure I think I read about 300 because if I like, here's the thing about door stoppers, and here's the thing to people who are daunted about seeing like a book that's over 600 pages long. If a book is interesting enough, it goes by really fast. And that's how I felt about it. It's 1,000 pages long and it goes by so fast, it's like, holy crap, it's pretty much done already. So it's like that. But here, like, and I felt the same way back with the Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, where it was thick and it was 700 pages, and I'm like, holy crap. And the last time I read it, it would took me like 3 days because, like, again, like elementary school, I was not into homework that much until my very last year where I got really good grades. But it was actually pretty damn good to actually get through. And so one of these days I should do a book tour, but that's gonna take about 8 hours because there are books in this drawer, there are books in those drawers, there are books there are books in that drawer over there. There's a tote box over there, and there are books here and on my guitar amp over there. So there are books pretty much everywhere, to the point where if I move out, I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna have books like lying around. If I don't have much of a bookshelf, or if my bookshelf is full, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have like a book fort of some kind. So I can't believe I've been talking this long about me being interested in books. Like pretty much almost half an hour dedicated to like talking about how I became a bookworm, and I'm pretty sure I left some things out. So I'd like to thank my mom for getting me into story time when I was little, and I also like to thank the people who like kept gauging my interest in reading books, because that's pretty much my like life, like reading books, like outside of making videos like these or the music video show. Well, not the movie reviews, but there's even books on my drawers here. So yeah, one of these days I should get some like give away some that I don't read. Like I still have books dating all the way back to when I got them in 2002. Again, the Sports Almanac, actually even earlier. Yeah. So thank you. Again, I'd like to thank my mom. Well, my to an extent, my both of my parents, but especially my mom for like getting me into like reading in terms of like getting me to go to the library like pretty much every day when I was a kid for reading day or reading time. I like to thank my friends for actually like getting me to read other things. Like I was opposed to like just horror all the time. It was pretty much young adult like LGBTQ books, books about introversion. Like again, not everybody is a bookworm, but sometimes all you need is something that interests you. You know, like I actually want to like suggest a lot more books to people. So eventually, I might want to make a book suggestion video or whatever. So if any of you have if any of you want me to suggest a book, then I'll go for it. I'll actually make a video. And I mean, sure, there are booktubers out there, but this is just a comedy show or a comedy channel. It's a comedy thing, I think. So if you want me to suggest anything, leave it in the comments or like this video or subscribe or something. I'm just rambling here, and eventually I will do book suggestions and whatever. So until then, or if I have anything else to say, no, I don't. So take care.